For decades, local farmers in southeastern Turkey plowed around a low, rounded hill and complained about the same nuisance. The ground was full of stones that broke their tools. They called it the Hill of the Navel. In the 1960s, a survey team from an American university actually walked across it, noticed broken limestone slabs, and decided it was probably a medieval graveyard. Nothing important. They moved on. They were standing on top of the single most important archaeological discovery of the century, and they had no idea. Because under that hill was not a graveyard. It was a temple. A complex of massive stone pillars, arranged in great rings, carved with animals that have been dead for thousands of years, and it was built around 12,000 years ago. To understand how impossible that number is, hold on to this one fact: Göbekli Tepe is older than agriculture. Older than the wheel. Older than writing, older than pottery, older than metal. It is roughly twice as old as Stonehenge, and far older than the pyramids of Egypt. When this temple was raised, humans were supposed to be wandering bands of hunter-gatherers with no permanent settlements and no monumental anything. And yet here it was. So who built it? And here is the question that haunts me more: why, after building it, did they take the whole thing and bury it on purpose? In the mid-1990s, a German archaeologist looked again at that medieval graveyard and trusted his instincts. What his team began to pull from the earth stopped the field of archaeology cold. Enormous T-shaped pillars of limestone, some standing over 5 meters tall and weighing as much as 10 tons, arranged in circular enclosures. And these weren't crude standing stones. They were carved beautifully, deliberately, with foxes, snakes, scorpions, vultures, wild boar, cranes. Some of the central pillars have arms carved down their sides and hands meeting at the front, as if the pillar itself is a stylized being, a stone giant watching over the ring. Cutting these pillars from the bedrock with stone tools, shaping them, carving them, and standing them upright would have taken hundreds of people, organized, fed, and coordinated over a long time. Think about what that actually requires. Someone had to quarry a 10-ton block from solid bedrock using only stone and bone. Dozens of people had to drag it, with no wheels and no draft animals, because neither existed yet, across rough ground and stand it upright without it shattering or crushing anyone. And while they did all this, they were not farming. They had to be fed by hunting and gathering alone, a steady supply of meat and wild grain hauled to the ridge for a workforce that grew no food of its own. That is a level of organization that textbooks flatly said could not exist among hunter-gatherers. It implies leadership, planning, shared purpose, and a belief powerful enough to make people give years of their lives to it. And that is the detail that broke the old story. For a century, the textbook said civilization happened in one specific order. First, humans learned to farm. Farming created food surpluses. Surpluses created towns. Towns created the free time and the social hierarchy needed to build temples and religion. Farm first. Temple last. Göbekli Tepe says the opposite. It was built by hunter-gatherers, before farming existed in the region. The temple came first. Which forces a staggering possibility that it wasn't bread that built the first monuments, it was belief. People may have come together to build a sacred place, and only then, to feed the crowds who gathered there, learned to farm. If that's true, religion didn't follow civilization. Religion may have created it. Walk among the pillars and you are surrounded by a stone zoo, and almost none of it is friendly. This is not a place of cattle and wheat and harvest. The carvings are dominated by dangerous things, venomous snakes, scorpions, snarling predators, and above all, vultures. On one famous pillar, a vulture appears to hold a round object, a sphere, above a headless human figure. Scholars have argued for years about what these scenes mean, and the honest answer is that no one fully knows. But a pattern emerges. Many researchers believe Göbekli Tepe is bound up with death, with the dead, with the journey of the soul, perhaps with a sky burial tradition where bodies were left for the vultures, the way some cultures still do. Fragments of human skulls found at the site show deliberate cut marks and carving, hinting at a skull cult, a ritual treatment of the dead we still don't understand. And notice what is absent. There are almost none of the images you'd expect from people obsessed with daily survival, no herd shown as food, no scenes of the hunter's triumph, none of the cozy domestic life that farming would later bring. Instead, the stone speaks only in the language of danger and the afterlife. Whoever gathered here did not climb this ridge to celebrate a harvest. They came, it seems, to stand face to face with death itself. So picture it, not a cheerful market town, but a remote ritual center on a high ridge, raised by people who travel to it, surrounded by carved predators and the symbolism of death. A cathedral of the Stone Age, built for the dead 11,500 years ago. And the people who built this place, who hauled these 10-ton giants up a hill and carved every scale and feather by hand, at some point, they made a decision that no one has ever fully explained. Here is the twist that turns Göbekli Tepe from an amazing ruin into a genuine mystery. The enclosures weren't abandoned and slowly covered by time and dust. They were filled in. Deliberately. By hand. The builders, or their descendants, took the entire complex, these monumental rings of carved pillars, and packed them with rubble, limestone fragments, animal bones, and debris, burying the whole thing under an artificial mound. That is why it survived in such extraordinary condition for 12,000 years, and that is why those farmers kept hitting stones. The hill was not a natural hill. It was the temple, entombed by the very people who revered it. Now think about the scale of that choice. You and hundreds of others spend generations building the most ambitious structure your world has ever seen. And then you choose to bury it, to carry thousands of tons of fill by hand and hide your masterpiece from the sky. Why? No one knows for certain, and that is the honest truth at the center of this. Maybe a sacred place had a lifespan, and when its time ended it had to be ritually killed and put to rest, like a body. Maybe burying the old enclosure was how you gave birth to the next one. Maybe it was meant to preserve it, to protect it, to seal something in, or to seal something out. What we can say is that the burial was not neglect. It was intention. They didn't lose this place. They put it away. And they did it more than once. The hill holds enclosure after enclosure, older rings filled in, newer rings raised beside or above them, in a long cycle of building, burying, and building again across many centuries. This was not one strange event. It was a tradition. For generation upon generation, people returned to this ridge to raise the dead stones, and then to lay them carefully back down. Step back and look at what this single hill did to history. Before Göbekli Tepe, the origin of civilization was a settled story with a clear sequence. After it, that sequence is in pieces. We now have hard evidence that complex, coordinated, monumental religious building happened among people who had not yet planted a single field, that the impulse to gather, to build something sacred together, to organize labor around a shared belief, runs deeper in us than farming, deeper than cities, maybe as deep as anything we are. For over a century the assumption was almost arrogant in its simplicity, that spiritual life was a luxury, something humans could only afford once their bellies were full and their granaries stocked. Göbekli Tepe quietly humiliates that idea. These people had no granaries. They had no certainty about tomorrow's meal. And still they chose to pour their scarce time and strength into raising carved giants toward the sky. The sacred, it turns out, may not be the reward waiting at the end of progress. It may be the engine sitting at the very start of it. And there's a tantalizing geographic clue. This corner of the world, the region around Göbekli Tepe, is very close to where some of the earliest domesticated wheat on Earth has been traced. So the picture sharpening into focus is almost poetic. People gathered at a sacred hill, in numbers too large to feed by hunting alone, and the pressure of feeding that gathering may have been one of the sparks that pushed them to tame the wild grasses growing around them. The temple drew the crowd. The crowd needed bread. And bread, in time, built the world. If that holds, then everything you think of as civilization, farms, cities, kings, writing, all of it, may trace back, in part, to the need to feed people who came together to worship at places like this one. A buried hill in Turkey may be standing near the true birthplace of the modern world. And the timing fits unnervingly well. The wild ancestors of our earliest crops grew on the very slopes of this region, and the genetic trail of the first domesticated wheat points back to mountains within sight of this hill. So the sequence may run like this: first the gathering, then the temple, then the crowds, and then the hunger of those crowds, which drove the slow, patient taming of the wild grasses that became wheat. The seed of agriculture, quite literally, sown in the shadow of the world's first temple. And here is the part that closes the circle, the part one can't stop thinking about. We have only excavated a fraction of Göbekli Tepe. By some estimates, the majority of it still lies under the earth, untouched. Ground surveys suggest there may be many more enclosures, more rings, more pillars, still buried in that hill, waiting. And we are deliberately leaving them there. Modern conservators have actually reburied and covered exposed sections of the site, backfilling them, shielding them under protective layers, because stone that survived 12,000 years sealed in the dark begins to crack and crumble within a few short years of being exposed to sun, rain, and frost. So we faced the same instinct the builders did. We dug it up, we marveled at what they made, and then, quietly, we put part of it back. We reburied it. To protect it. To save it for a future better equipped to handle it. There is something almost humbling in that symmetry. Across 12,000 years, two completely different peoples looked at the same sacred stones and made the same choice, that some things are better kept covered. The builders buried their temple for reasons we may never fully grasp. We bury it again for reasons of preservation. But the act is the same, and the lesson underneath it is strange and quiet. Not everything we find is meant to be left open to the sky. So the next time you hear that we have discovered the past, remember the hill of the navel, and remember that the greatest things we found are often the ones we chose, carefully, to bury again. What do you think is still waiting under that hill? Tell me in the comments, and I'll see you at the next one.